Good morning, everyone. My name is MightyStream. I'm going to do our March the 20th just for today in a meditation. I hope you're doing well today. The title of today's meditation, Higher Power. Most of us have no trouble admitting that addiction had become a destructive force in our lives. Our best efforts resulted in ever greater destruction and despair. At some point, we realized that we needed the help of some power greater than our addiction. Now, that comes from our basic text, page 24. Most of us know without a doubt that our lives have been filled with destruction. Learning that we have a disease called addiction helps us understand the source or cause of this destruction. We can recognize addiction as a power that has worked devastation in our lives. When we take the first step, we admit that the destructive force of addiction is bigger than we are. We are powerless over it. At this point, our only hope is to find some power greater than the force of our addiction, a power bent on preserving life, not ending it. We don't have to understand it or even name it. We only have to believe that there could be such a higher power. The belief that a benevolent power greater than our addiction just might exist gives us enough hope to stay clean a day at a time. Just for today, I believe in the possibility of some power that's bigger than my addiction. Let's take a moment of silence, followed by the we version of the Serenity Prayer. Moment of silence now, please. Thank you. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things that we cannot change, the courage to change the things that we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for today, please, and thank you. So we're talking about our higher power. We're talking about the ability to believe in something that is more powerful than the disease of addiction. Again, we're using this terminology as a quote from the basic text, page 24. Most of us have no trouble admitting that addiction had become a destructive force in our lives. So I'm focusing on the word destructive, because in another sentence somewhere in the basic text, and I wish I could lay my hands on it for you right now as we speak, and I might be able to before we end, it talks about a lower power, right? A destructive lower power, or a lower destructive power. So the word again is used in the sense of destroying something, something that is destructive. And so that's exactly what I perceive my disease of addiction actively using to be. Everything I laid my hands on slipped away from me. Everything I touched ended up being harmed or damaged. Every relationship I had, not that they all ended, but they all were damaged in some kind of way as a direct result of my active addiction. And that's why we talk about the wreckage of our past and we talk about making amends, right? Because we destroyed a lot of things. We need something, or we needed something that was greater than that force of addiction, that destructive force. And for many of us, if you're born in the United States, for many of us, we always had access to religion. That was no problem. Somewhere else in basic text, it talks about enforced morality lacks the power, right? To basically, I'm paraphrasing greatly here, but lacks the power to bring about a lasting change. And so, religion for many of us, it might have held us for a while, but apparently it didn't hold us well enough, because if it had, would we really be addicts, right? I know I was a closet addict for a long time because of religion, and so I'm not saying that uh, anything other than to say we had access to the understanding of a God, not necessarily the same one, but we all had access. For the majority of us here in the States, we had access to a God. And for whatever reason, we chose a different course. We went a different course. I do struggle to make the disease of addiction or active addiction sound like something we all intentionally chose. I think sometimes the circumstances we were in made it more possible for us to lean that direction. Yeah, we chose it because usually, unless you're just around awful caregivers, usually nobody's going to force you to get high, right? So we chose it. But there are some abused children that, they had liquor in their bottles. They had people blowing, smoke in their face while they were getting high, and they were abused in that way. And that's abuse, and a lot of times the babies are born, some of us, were born addicted. That's a real conversation. But for the most part, I'm talking about coming to a point in time where you have the ability to make a decision, and you make the decision to get high. And the getting high carries you away and starts causing destruction in your life. We need access to something greater than destruction and despair. And a lot of times we have come to realize that we needed the help of a higher power. And many of us struggle to use the G word, and I get it. I get it. I was like that because I thought I had a hold, right? I thought I had a monopoly on the word God and spirituality. And I really didn't give two hoots about anybody else trying to explain to me who or what their God was. Matter of fact, I already had developed, because of religiosity, I had already developed my own understanding of your higher power, because believe me, I had studied yours too, right? And so there wasn't anybody in my arrogance, there wasn't any conversation you could bring to me about God or spirituality, you know. And so I wasn't interested in the G word. And I assumed every time I heard the G word that it was headed in a religious direction. And I always had a debate. I was always ready to go to court and stand trial with anybody in that conversation. And it was a horrible way to live. It was a horrible frame of mind to isolate and alienate anything and everyone just over one word, right? It caused division for me in every area. So when I eventually got clean and realized that all of my understanding had led me down to nothing, back to you know, a, a a place of powerlessness and into a fellowship that I basically kind of look down upon, because who wants to be an addict? Who's going to claim that, right? It led me there. I had a lot of humble pie to eat. And just because I got clean didn't mean that the conversation about a higher power, God, became easier. There were many a meetings, many a flipped over tables, many a cuss outs over you talking to me about your higher power. I struggled and I struggled hard, and it was a tough going in the beginning because of my attitude and my disposition about religiosity. And I had confused that with spirituality. I'm just telling you my story. I'm just telling you my story. That I'm trying to let you know exactly why I'm not afraid to have a podcast. I'm not afraid to talk about God, higher power, the 12 steps. I'm trying to let you know how I got free from something that had tentacles that went beyond just not using drugs. Like it had fixed itself around my heart, around my mind, around my tongue. Everything about me was obstinate. Everything, everything. And so when I realized that, girl, look at you. Look where you are. Look, and at that time people smoked at meetings and what I thought about smoking a cigarette. I was like, psh, you can't come in my house smelling like a cigarette, period. Right. So my OCD was real bad. Right. I mean, I'm talking about real bad. Check your cigarettes at your car, check your shoes at the door. As soon as you left, I was back to cleaning my house behind you. I'm talking about I had gotten to a place where I could not tolerate my own humanity, less known that of someone else. I couldn't stand people. So to sit in a meeting and rub shoulders with actively using people or not actively using people, I had to fight against my own judgmentality. I had to fight to sit in a meeting. And there are many a meetings I'd leave just because I couldn't be present with other human beings. I mean, you want to talk about being driven into isolation. I was perfectly fine not to encounter one single person, not for one day, not for two, not for a week, not for 2 weeks. I could, at that time, go a lifetime without ever interacting with another human being, you know, just because I felt I needed to protect myself. And unfortunately, a lot of that came from religiosity and the way that I was raised, unfortunately. So here I found myself in Narcotics Anonymous sitting with, a bunch of us trying to recover. And I had to fight my own disgust with myself that this is where I landed. How in the world could you allow, at that time, I blamed it on the drug of choice. How could you allow your drug of choice to take you that far away? That this is the only place you could come to get help. So I had an attitude. I mean, I had a bad attitude. Eventually, I figured out. Someone read the beginning of the book where it talked about this book is about the nature of recovery, right? From the disease of addiction. And I was like, I remember going to some things with my mom that talked about alcoholism being a disease. Oh, disease. Oh, okay. So I'm not morally deficient. It's not something wrong with me like that. This is a sickness. This is a disease. Oh, and I started to grasp hope. And I began to be less indignant when people started talking about God. And I started to open up my heart and my ears. And I figured out, okay, the way around that is just say higher power. Okay, the way around that G word is just say higher power. But it had to be benevolent, right? Loving and caring, the only suggestion about it. And I started to embrace the possibility that I could be restored to sanity. That's what we're talking about here. Right? All these last several minutes to come to step 2, came to believe that we could be restored to sanity. Do you believe that you can be restored to sanity? After I had shared all that with you, and I haven't even given you the gory details, right? I finally got it. Okay. And a door was cracked open for my step 2. How about you? Sitting there listening to me, driving to work. How about you? I'm talking to you because now it's not about me. I just shared my experience, strength, and hope. What's yours? What is yours when it comes to this higher power topic? Where are you truthfully? Because if you cannot pinpoint where you're at, how can anyone get to you to help you find where you need to go? Because it's unlikely you're going to work this program by yourself. I tried it. But it's a we program, right? This is the training spot. This is the training ground where we get to make mistakes and not use over them. We get to cuss. We get to, I don't know, show all kind of. I mean, I talk to people. I don't cuss and I don't swear. Yeah, but you lie, you cheat, you steal, you judge. So let's not get on any high horse about what we don't do, right? At some point in time, the things that you are doing that are setting up your disease of addiction to continue to back you up into a corner you can't get out of clean, at some point in time, we're going to have to address a power greater than yourself. Oh man, I could go, right? I could keep going. A power greater than your own self-will, a power greater than the destructive force of active addiction and the disease of addiction. At some point in time, there's going to have to be another surrender. And my question to you is, where are you at with this one, with the topic of higher power? Because I just share with you my ugly, disgusting point of view, knowing that some of you may think, who in the world does she think she was, right? Some of you may judge me because of the things that I've shared here today, but this is my story, and this is where I've come from. So when I go into talking about higher power, God, religion, spirituality, I'm coming from a place where, in my point of view, I was one of those people. I acted like I had no belief in God, but truly I did. I just didn't want anyone disturbing my belief. I had to open myself up, and you're going to have to do the same. Without a doubt, you're going to have to do the same, and we're here to help you. My name is Mighty Stream. I've enjoyed talking to you today. I hope that you're okay after this podcast. I really hope you're better and not worse. If you need to talk about it, if you want to reach out to me, leave a comment down below, right? And let's have a dialogue. Have a beautiful day on purpose. Talk to you tomorrow.